Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Crossing Open Doors. My name is Eloisa Franco and I will be sharing with you today an interview I did in Hamtramck, Michigan, and it's the great testimony of a lady that went from being a Catholic to a Muslim for 25 years and then finally a born-again believer, and she shares how Jesus brought her back to him. And please pay attention to the details of this story because this video was made with learning purposes and I'm sure there is a lot to learn from it. If you have any question, please leave it in the comments and I will try to answer the best I can. Here we are with my new friend that she will be introducing herself to get to allow us to know her testimony and how she became a believer.
Hi, my name is Christine Hartley. And I have been a believer now for 5 years. I was born here in the United States and I was raised Catholic. And my father was from Europe, from Albania, and fled communist Albania as a child and lived as a refugee in Greece for 16 years and came to the US at age 18. And met my mother, who is Polish-American, born and raised here in Hamtramck. And my mother was Catholic, and my father was born Muslim. And there was a conflict getting married because my mother could only marry a Catholic. So my father converted to Catholicism and converted to Christianity. He said he believed in Jesus as the Son of God, as the Messiah. So our parents raised my sisters and I have 4 sisters, there's 5 girls, as Catholic, and we left the Catholic Church at age 14 and went to a non-denominational church, and I was water baptized, and I was very, very close to Jesus. I loved the Bible. I used to read the Bible as a child. I used to talk and sing songs and write poems to God and letters to God. So I was a believer as a child, and I always knew the existence of God, and I was very touched by what Jesus did on the cross. So I was a true Christian.
So could you share with us what you told me about your dad seeing Jesus before when he was a child?
Yes. So my father grew up as a refugee in Greece, and he was teased and tormented a lot because he was a Muslim, and so there was the tension between the Greeks and the Albanians and the Turks. So he was beat up a lot as a child, and so he would go on his own, and he had told us that he had seen Christ in an olive tree, and so when my mother told him that she could only marry a Christian, then my father said, it's easy for me because I saw Christ as a child and experienced him, and I went to church, Orthodox church, and I believe in Jesus as the Son of God, as the Messiah. So it was something that it was easy for him because he had experienced that as a child.
Was there something you were struggling with as being a believer, even being in the church as a born-again Christian and baptized? Was it something you were struggling with?
So when I was 18, I went to college in Dearborn, and I met Muslims, and I had a different perception of Islam. During that time, we had a lot of tense political situations, so Islam was demonized in the media. So when I met a friend who was Muslim, and I just felt that there were so many similarities between us. She wasn't a strict Muslim. She didn't wear hijab, but I just felt that we had similar beliefs. She said that she had believed in Jesus, not as the Son of God, but she had believed in miracles that he did. So I felt there was a connection that I never knew really had existed. I didn't know that my father was Muslim until I was in college. Mm-hmm. So it was something that was never discussed. Mm-hmm. And, I think that had it been discussed and we were educated about that, maybe. So I did have, I think, a weakness. I was searching. Even though I knew Christ, I was still searching, to find a deeper relationship with Him. And at that time, I had met my ex-husband.
But before going to that
Yeah.
point, I remember you mentioned something that you asked a nun about who is Jesus and how can Jesus be
Yeah.
God and at the same time
Yeah.
a man. And then you also ask your pastor, but did they give you answers about that?
So as a child, I went to catechism, which Catholics do. And I struggled with the Trinity, the concept of the Trinity as a child. And as a teenager and a young adult, I struggled. And that was always something very difficult for me. So when I asked the nun at catechism, I don't understand, how can Jesus be God? And how could there three be one? She told me that this is something that is a great mystery. And one day when we get to heaven, all these great mysteries will be revealed and we'll understand, but we just have to have faith and believe. And so when I started questioning my faith and questioning the Bible and questioning the Trinity, as a teenager, when I was in college, I went to my pastor, Pastor Johnston at the time, and he had difficulty answering my questions as well. He said that it was based on faith and we needed just to believe. And so I wanted the logical. I was in college. I was searching for truth.
You wanted to understand.
Yes. And that's something that, my Muslim friend had told me, like, Islam is a logical religion, based on one God, based on praying and fasting and doing this and that and that. So I think at that time that deceived me to think that I could pray, I could fast, I could do all these things to show God how much I loved Him. And perhaps that would be enough. So it was a process for me. It wasn't like I became a Muslim immediately. I ended up getting married as a Christian, and then I ended up converting after a few years.
Because you met your husband at college.
Yes. Yeah, my husband, he was very, very passionate about Islam. And he said, we can get married, you can remain Christian, you don't have to convert for me, but I want the children to be raised Muslim. And I struggled with that.
How old were you when you married him?
I was 20. I was 20.
Okay, so how was your process because he said you don't have to convert to Islam, but you did convert, right?
Yes. So after my daughter was born, I realized that there was a lot of strain on our marriage with the different beliefs. And so gradually I just sort of convinced myself that I could be a believer in God, I could pray, I could fast, I could do all give to the poor, I could do that and somehow still reach heaven in my mind at that time. That's what I thought.
And what did you get to learn about Jesus in Islam? Like, how were you believing in Jesus being a Muslim, or what was it that they explained to you who Jesus was?
So I thought at the time that because I struggled and I had that weakness in understanding the Trinity, that I thought that he was a great man, a great prophet that did miracles. There are a few miracles that that were mentioned in the Quran that weren't mentioned
in the Bible.
When Jesus, but I now as a Christian, I believe that it's very clear to what Jesus was, alayhi salam, was saying at the time. Is in the Quran, there's a miracle of Jesus as a baby that he says, peace be upon me, the day that I was born, the day that I die, and the day that will be raised again. And to me, as a Christian, that confirms that Jesus did die on the cross and that he was raised again. So I believe that is true as a Christian. I can believe that. But I believed that maybe there was. I thought maybe they worshipped him because he did such great miracles, and then they started believing that he was God. So I thought maybe there's a possibility that happened in history. You know, instead of worshiping God, they worshiped the man. And so I struggled with that. So then I just decided, okay, I'm going to be Muslim, and I'll do my very best that I can to pray and fast, and that will be enough to get into heaven.
And so after being married with this Muslim man, how long after your wedding you became a Muslim?
It was approximately 2 years.
And for how long were you a Muslim before coming back to Christ?
So it's 25 years.
And how was it that you, how did Jesus, brought you back to him?
So now I know. I had dreams. I was blessed. I think God spoke to me through dreams. I had dreams before my grandfather died. I was known in my family that if I had a dream that something is going to happen, because I had dreamt before my grandfather had a heart attack, that there was a car crash, and so I spoke to my grandmother over coffee and told her, and so that kind of confirmed in my family that, okay, maybe I had a gift of dreams and visions. So I had, as a Muslim, when I was living in East Dearborn, I had this amazing dream. I dreamt that I was coming home from shopping, and my husband opens the door, and he has this look of joy, complete joy in his eyes. His eyes were lit up like he had seen something spectacular. And he said, "You won't believe who is in our house." And, I was guessing, his family, maybe a relative. And he said, "Think bigger." And so I go, I come into the house with the groceries, and I put them down, and I look and I see this light in our living room, and it was Jesus. And he said, "Jesus came to visit us. Go get all the sweets, baklava. Go make some tea. We have a visitor. We have to feed him. We have to have a feast." So I woke up, and at the time I had told him my dream. And he told me, "This is a very special dream. You need to call the imam and ask him what does it mean." So at the time I was pregnant with my youngest son, Hassan. So I called the imam at the mosque, and I told him my dream. And he said the interpretation of the dream meant this, that one of my children would marry a Christian. But I felt like, no, this dream, was for me. My kids were not in my dream. And he said, "No, this is what it means. But now as a Christian, I know that Jesus never gave up on me, even though I denied him, even though I denied who he was, that he was the Son of God. He never gave up, and he always tried to reach me." So through dreams, I believe he brought me back to him.
Do you have any other dream you had during that time?
I did. So several years later, I dreamt, I had a brother-in-law that died young of cancer, Sam, and he was very dear to us. And so I dreamt a few months after his passing that I was walking, and then there was a room that was lit up, and the closer I got to it, I saw Sam sitting up in a hospital bed, alive and looking vibrant and young, and we were so excited that he was alive. And at the time he said, go and bring my kids to me. Tell them that I'm alive." And so I just ran out of excitement out of the room, and to go get his children and my children and the family, and tell them that Sam's alive. And I was all of a sudden the room got further and further away, and I was in complete darkness in this hallway. And I looked, and I saw this transparent huge figure with wings, and it was an angel, and I was terrified, and I was like shaking, and it spoke to me, and it said, "Do not be afraid. I come to bring you peace. God sees your heart and has a gift for you." And I held out, I was afraid, I was covering my eyes and just shaking, and I held out my hand, and I saw that he had a purple silk scarf. And so I held my hand open, and as the scarf dropped in my hand, I woke up, in a sweat. And I didn't know what it meant. At the time, I was Muslim. And now, as a Christian, I look back and I know that that gift was the salvation of the cross. And so, I know sometimes you can't see it at the time, what you're going through. You can't see the path, but I know that he was calling me back to him.
Thank you for watching this video. I invite you to watch the second part of it. If you like it, please give me a like, share with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Also, don't forget to leave your comments or your questions, and I'll try to answer the best I can. May Jesus be with you.